Welcome to the What's Happening Birmingham video podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Jarvis S. Scott with What's Happening Birmingham. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of face I know very well. Some of you all may know very well. I like to call her a tireless defender for Alabama families here in our state. State Senator Merika Coleman, District 19, and also a municipal court judge for the city of Birmingham. Senator Coleman, thanks for coming on today.
Glad to be on. I'm gonna get my Zoom lighting right, like how you do it when I become an expert. So you're gonna have to show me how to set it up. Look like I have a shadow, but we're gonna rock and roll.
Yeah, I do like it. Well, thank you for coming on. As you all know, I try to, from time to time, bring on elected officials to kind of give us an update what's going on in government. And particularly, I think it's probably one of my first time interviewing a state senator
really?
on the podcast. Yes, to kind of talk about, the interesting things that come up in Alabama in the legislature, I like to call it. Or what they call it, Goat Hill down there, right?
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah, Goat Hill. So we're going to cover a couple of topics, everybody. But before we start, kind of explain to the viewers, the whole legislative session for.
Yeah, and just really quick, I know our viewers know there are three levels of government. Our federal level, our state level, and then our municipal city. And then of course in between that, you have your county elected officials as well. What we do is at the state legislative end is everything that's not enumerated in the Constitution or written is left to the states. That's a whole lot of other stuff. And so we have concurrent powers also with the federal government when it comes to school funding, economic development, and some others. But we are a part-time legislature in Alabama. And so technically we're only in session 30 days out of the year, but that ends up translating into 3 months out of the year because we're in session Tuesdays and Thursdays of the week from February to May. And then we have committee days on Wednesdays. Every blue moon, we'll have a 3-day work week, but that's generally it. We're in Montgomery, our state capital, 3 months out of the year. And of course, we come in from all over the state of Alabama.
Okay. So I guess first off, I know there's been a lot of legislation going through, proposed legislation, I have to call it, things that's been signed. I guess the biggest thing that was signed, or I guess is it the governor's, it's a Glock switch, right?
So yeah, for Jefferson. So that is one of the that's a big issue for, of course, any of the metropolitan areas. But because of the magnitude of what's been happening, it has become a statewide bill. Sometimes bills end up just being local bills, but that Glock switch bill is definitely something that is needed statewide now because of the harm that is causing people. I guess they used to say there used to be like honor amongst thieves, if there's such a thing, and where if somebody was after somebody, they would go after that somebody. But now with the Glock switch, you're going after somebody, like what happened at the Hush shooting, allegedly. They ended up shooting multiple people, innocent bystanders, because when they hit that Glock, a video I saw, you hit it one time and it's shooting like 17 times. And so nobody has control over where that bullet is going. So that did end up making it as a part of the governor's agenda. Now, I did mention that, of course, we're Democrats and Republicans. I'm an elected Democrat. And so the Democratic Party, of course, has its own agenda. The Republicans have their own agenda. And that is something that is what we refer to as bipartisan. Both parties are supporting putting some type of not outright ban or restriction on Glock switches in the state of Alabama. And so again, it's one of those ones that we've seen some action in this session. So just to give the viewers some numbers, there are a total of 140 members in our Alabama legislature, 105 in the House, only 35 of us in the Senate. Of those 140 total, there are only 35 African Americans. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Only 38 Democrats. So we only got
Oh,
33 white Democrats now and only 21 women. I mean, so some of the issues that, especially communities of color, urban areas, and Black issues, those are going to be issues that are going to be very hard because of the makeup of the legislative bodies. So I wanted to make sure I gave those numbers. But when it comes to the Glock switch issue, that is an issue that it has bipartisan support. And we've seen quite a bit of action. We passed a version of the bill in the Senate before we went on break last week, and the House has passed a version also.
okay. Well, I'm glad because that was, we definitely need to build in this area. So what forms of legislation are you sponsoring or co-sponsoring this session?
Yeah, so I've been serving now for 22 years, going into my 23rd year, but this is only my second year in the Senate. I served, 20 years in the House. And again, I have been a champion for the same types of issues. So, I was about 12 years old when I started there, if it was between.
Yeah, I told you too.
Only I was about 12, right? So actually I was 28. So but I've always sponsored legislation that was about quality of life, making sure that the poor have additional opportunities, workers' rights. Human trafficking has been another big issue that I've taken on and been able to champion and get bills passed. But this session, somebody said, "Are you picking on the police this session?" And 100% not. However, I do believe that there needs to be a better relationship between the community and the police. And so I have a piece of legislation that is a body cam legislation that within 30 days, a police department would have to turn in that body cam and dash cam and make it a matter of public record. I have a taser piece of legislation that, remember, if we saw that situation in Reform, Alabama. I don't know if everybody saw it. If you did not, please go check it out. There was a female officer that tased a young man over and over again who was complying. Like he was doing what the officer asked him to do, and she continued to tase him. And so my bill there's a civil piece and there's a criminal piece that if a person is complying, like you just don't take that, and if they're complying and no longer a threat, that you can't tase them now. And then the last one I will mention when it comes to, I guess law enforcement, any of that, is I have Senate Bill 170, and my email has been blowing up the whole week that we had a constituent week last week, so we were in district last week, not in Montgomery. So my email last week, somebody, probably the NRA, has told all of these people to email me, and it's a red flag bill, and all the bill says is if you are shown to be a threat to yourself or to others, that law enforcement has a tool that they can remove those guns from your possession temporarily. But, the NRA doesn't like any of those kind of bills, although it is a nonpartisan or bipartisan piece of legislation. We have red states, we have blue states that support red flag bills, but yet, you want to talk about some, I have very thick skin, you can say a lot to me. Don't bother me if you're not, have any direct impact on me personally. You're not messing with my coin, my children, my family. When you sign up to be an elected official, you sign up also for the attacks. But this particular piece of legislation through the years, and this is my 5th year having it, man, I have been called some of the most horrible names that you could ever think about. The C word when it comes to calling a woman. Of course, I've been called the B word, ultimate, many, many times when it comes to legislation. Anytime a strong woman is there, they're going to use that. That kind of stuff doesn't hurt or harm me. I'm just doing what, I feel is best for my constituents and protecting folks. So those are a few. I have 9 pieces of legislation this session, but that's 3 that I could mention. And of course, I'm a vice chair of the Black Caucus, leader in the work directly with my minority leader, Bobby Singleton and Roger Smitherman and Merika Coleman Madison, from Jefferson County. So, we collectively are doing all that we can to support and help the community and the folks in Jefferson and statewide.
Okay. Now, one of the things, continuing as, we've been all these cuts that's been happening up in Washington.
Yes. Yes.
And particularly one of the things, people, I think they're trying to cut either Social Security or Medicaid. Is there any prospects of any expansion going on here in Alabama for that?
Whew. So that is a great question, and I hope that people are really tuned in to what's going on at the federal level. I've heard people say that, hey, what they do in Washington, D.C. doesn't impact me. They can, they can fire all the federal employees until people start realizing the role that the federal government really plays to all of us. Every last one of us has somebody in our family that is impacted by Social Security. It's our money. It's the money that you paid into Social Security.
Yeah.
It's not free government money. It's you paid into it. So I'm glad that you asked the question so people can realize that if they hadn't already, that what's going on with the potential cuts to Social Security, potential cuts to Medicaid, but also my dad is a veteran. They're talking about cutting to veterans, and we know some veterans lost their jobs. So what is happening now is people are looking at the states like, what can you do? Well, when it comes to what we can do is, of course, same thing that the public can do is contact our members of Congress, and not only Terry Sewell. She is not the only member of Congress to contact. If you live in conservative districts, don't just call Terry Sewell and Shamari Figures. You need to call Tuberville. You need to call Britt. You need to call Kerry Palmer. You need to call these conservative folks when you live in their district and say, hey, look, I want you to vote against a budget or a continuing resolution that is going to cause cuts to Social Security, Medicaid, and the VA. Every Republican in the state of Alabama supported the continuing resolution to make those cuts. Terry Sewell, Shamari Figures voted against it. And we got to keep these people accountable. So what now people are looking at, they're looking at the states like, what can y'all do? Well, we can't expand Medicaid if there's not a Medicaid to expand. And, we are not the ones that administer the Social Security program that's done at the federal level. But people get it confused sometimes because we have a Social Security office here, especially those of us that are right here in Jefferson that you can go to. And, remember that it was on the chopping block. There was, Elon Musk and Doge went all around and they decided all of these places that need to be closed. Our Jefferson County, that Social Security office was on the chopping block. The Freedom Riders Museum in Montgomery. So I'm hoping that folks now know that it's just not this. Some people talk to me all the time and they're like, the mayor this, the mayor that, or the city council this, the city council that. That is one form of government. But we do a whole lot at the state level, and people actually don't even pay attention a lot of times to what happens at the federal level, except for who is president. But it's the legislative branch of government that is making these laws, except for, the Republicans right now that are giving all of their power away to Trump. So I thank you for the podcast and what you're doing to make sure that your viewing audience stays engaged. This is actually the time to fight. As a Democrat, I will say this publicly. I am very upset that, the Democratic leadership in the Senate, now in the House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives, they fought against any of those cuts that we mentioned, Medicaid, VA, all of the in the other Social Security. Well, Chuck Schumer has said that he's going to vote for the continuing resolution, and continuing resolution is just a short-term fix to keep the government open. He says that he's going to support it. I really wish they would have they would have stayed together and fought against any of those cuts to show, the detriment that it's going to be to the people across this country. But people are looking to the states now, and those are not state functions. But we, those of us, I can't speak for not one Republican, but I can speak for the Black Caucus and the Democratic caucuses in both the House and the Senate on the state level. And we are fighting the good fight on the state level. And one of my colleagues said the other day, I think it was Roger Smitherman, I think he said the other day, the battle that, and it's a play on another quote, but it is the battle that the Democrats are fighting in Washington, D.C. is televised, but our battle is not. So people don't see when we're filibustering. I mean, we're delaying and we're standing up and we're
Mhm.
fighting against cuts on archives in the state of Alabama, which is the Archives Commission. Right now, there's a bill to eliminate this the board and roll back the leadership. And right now, we have a Black female that is the chair, and we have a Black female, Magdala Hamilton, here from in Jefferson County, that's on the board. They want those two women off. And they want to change the makeup of archives and history in the state of Alabama because they don't want to teach Black history.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want the focus on Black history. They don't want the focus to be on LGBTQ plus history or Hispanic history or Native and Indigenous history. So they want to change altogether who the makeup of these people are. Nobody sees when we're on the microphone for a day or 2 days holding that kind of stuff up. You know, people don't see when we have a battle along filibuster when they try to criminalize doing absentee ballots in the state of Alabama or eliminate curbside voting, which they ultimately did. There was after COVID, no more curbside voting. So people don't see the battles that we have on the state level. They get a chance to see in Washington, D.C. But I just want to tell you all that, you know, your Black caucus and your Democratic caucus in both the House and the Senate, we are holding up, you know, the blood-stained banner, you know, fighting the good fight to try to make sure that poor people, community of color, and that's all folks. That's not just, you know, communities of color, but poor people, disenfranchised communities are not, taken advantage of in the state of Alabama. But what I don't understand is why poor rural white people continue to vote for the Republican Party. I just don't understand it when they're the ones that are taking the benefits away from them.
And that scratches my head. And another thing that's going to happen too with a lot of these people losing their jobs, they're going to have to file for unemployment. And I don't know whether this is true or not. Did somebody try to propose a bill to try to increase the unemployment requirements in this session?
In our session? Exactly. This session, and there's a bill that comes up normally every year, but this year there's a big, thank you for that question too, there's a big push on it. They're trying to increase the work requirements and all of those things. Not just that you have gone out to try to get a job, but they want to make those increases. And so it's going to make it harder for you actually to draw the unemployment. Again, that's still the Republican Party that is doing that in our state. We have such an imbalance, and you know, some people are not Democrat or Republicans. A lot of independents. Some people say, you know, I only vote for whoever I feel is helping me at the moment, and that's great. I think that government works best when there are closer numbers of people on both sides of the aisle, so they are forced to work together. Because there is a super majority right now of Republicans. They literally could gavel into session, and they did it. They did it during COVID. They could gavel into session with not one Democrat to show up in Alabama, and they would have a quorum. Is something wrong with that? You end up having voices of certain people not heard when it's like that. It was like that when I first got into the legislature as a Democrat. So I want people to understand, even as a Democrat, when we had the huge super majority, that there were challenges for other folks. I think it works better when you have numbers that are closer and your people are forced to actually politic. So what is politicking? It is the art of negotiation.
Oh yeah.
But when you don't have to negotiate, the public ends up losing out.
Yeah, and another thing too, I'll go back to that voting thing. Are you all trying to propose any bills for absentee or early voting this session?
Yeah, so so I'm being very partisan. I'm talking a lot about Democrats, but it just is what it is. So the Democratic caucus has a full package of bills for early voting, which of course we technically don't have early voting in the state of Alabama. We also have a bill that is to get rid of having to do an excuse absentee. You know, right now, if you do an absentee, you have to fit into one of those boxes. So a no excuse absentee is, you know, I just want to vote absentee. I want to, you know, so and so there's also a bill for, you know, just to make it easier for veterans and other people with disabilities to vote. And we have those pieces of legislation, but because of the make of the legislative body, the chairs of every committee, before any bill makes it to the full body, it has to go through the committee process. The chair of the committee determine what makes it to the agenda for the committee. And right now, one of the gripes that we've had on the Democratic side is our bills are not making it to committee. So what's probably happening now, because we started all of that before we left, 2 weeks ago, before the break last week, our leadership, we were like, look, we got to have some bills to come up on the calendar for the Democrats as well, or we're going to continue to filibuster. That's probably why now I'm getting all of these emails about Senate Bill 170, because they probably getting ready to put it on the calendar, right? They hadn't notified me they're putting it on the calendar yet, but that's probably why, because it's been introduced. It was pre-filed, so that bill, no, it actually wasn't pre-filed. I filed that bill right in February. It's what at the top of February, but it's been out there for going on now almost 2 months. We're almost at the top of April, but now all of a sudden, all of this is coming up. But I mentioned that piece of legislation because we passed a bill in honor of 2 veterans who committed suicide. And we refer to it as the safe harbor bill, to where somebody could voluntarily give their guns up if they felt like they were a threat to themselves. And I supported that bill. But on the day of that we voted on it, we voted on it the week right before we left. I said, hey, this is a great piece of legislation. I'm supporting this in honor of these veterans. However, we do also need a tool for other people in addition to veterans that may feel like they are a harm to themselves as well. But NRA doesn't like my bill, so that's what happened. Now I forgot what your original question was, how I even got on that particular. But if you hear me, Jarvis, what I do in the legislature, I believe, is my ministry. I'm very passionate about this work that I do. I believe in the process, even when although it's a flawed process now because of the lack of the makeup in the 2 parties. And I'm gonna fight for what I believe is right, and I believe this is what God has me here to do at this moment in time. And so, I love it. I do get frustrated on some of the very bad days, but do know that you do have a fighter in Merika Coleman. I just want you all to tune in a little bit more. We are online, and pay attention to what some of these folks are doing or trying to do to the laws here in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, and like another hot topic, I guess it's been national, but here, you probably might like this acronym, what I'm about to say. We've been hearing so much about DEI, but I feel like people have twisted it to mean division, exclusion, and insecurity.
I like that. I might have to steal that one.
Yeah, you can use that one. But what impact has it had here in the government and also in the state? I know you mentioned earlier about the archives, but any other programs in the state?
Oh yeah. So in Alabama, they didn't call it anti-DEI. They had what they referred to as a divisive concepts legislation. Okay. And the Republicans actually passed it last year. Okay. And here is the rub I have with the Republicans and anybody. I to the Republican, I can't stand when people lack courage to tell the truth, right? And so they passed this piece of divisive concept legislation that is supposed to be Alabama's version of getting rid of DEI. But the Black Caucus was able to get some amendments in it to say that, you can't stop teaching history. We actually saved the governor has a Department of Minority Affairs. And their original version of the bill, they were going to cut out the whole department in the governor's office. So there were some amendments. That is the process that even though we are in the minority, we can amend a bill so it's not as bad as it could have been. But when I say that the portion about the courage, what bothers me is that when Republicans, they want to go back to their constituents and say they've passed something just to say they've passed something, even if it isn't quite as, I hope I'm not being clear, even if it isn't quite exactly what they say it is, But as long as they can use the buzzwords to their constituents, they haven't done the research to say if indeed they've actually done the thing. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah,
And so
because like,
last year, yeah, with that divisive concept bill, again, that was their version of DEI. Yes, and it did impact. If anybody followed it, they ended up closing out all of the DEI offices and the colleges across the state of Alabama. The University of Alabama is currently being sued by the federal government. This new Trump administration, it's
oh,
crazy,
wow.
saying that they continue to have scholarships and other spaces that are just for African Americans or communities of color. This Trump administration is using the Department of Civil Rights, or the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, in the opposite way that it should be used, where it should be used to protect the disabled and women and communities of color. They're using it to completely eliminate those spaces altogether. And so, yes, it has impacted us. It will continue to impact it. And some of it is just fear. Of course, I know of some programs. I'm affiliated with some schools where they did not do women's histories programs, or are changing the names of entities because they do get federal dollars and don't want to risk losing federal dollars. So yes, it has 100, what happened at the federal level, and then the state legislation has impacted us as well. Some high schools didn't do Black history programs.
Oh my goodness.
And a lot of that just has to do with the fear of what could ultimately happen because of the direction that this Trump administration is taking this country. And we just shouldn't take this lying down,
And my thing is this, is like I always tell people, show me the stats where DEI has discriminated against, specifically white people.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's
but
right.
never show the stats for that.
They can't show you. They can't. So you've heard diversity, equity, and inclusion is not being anti-white. That's not what it is. It is, the whole concept is about making sure that all voices and all communities have an opportunity. It doesn't even guarantee anything. So I have a master's in public administration, and so I had to write. I'll never forget that I had to do a comp. So I had to do a comp exam to graduate, and they were not calling it diversity, equity, inclusion at the time. But my question had something to do about how do you encourage a diverse workplace in the absence of affirmative action? Because remember that was the term affirmative action. And so of course I had to research. And actually what research shows us is that the more diverse the voices are, actually the better outcome for everyone. That's what it shows us. That's why they can't show you a stat, Jarvis, because diversity, equity, inclusion does not mean we are going to put our foot on the neck of white people. That's not what it means. It means that women, and you all know the number one benefactor of diversity, equity, inclusion has been white women. So that women, Black folks, other minorities, the disabled, LGBTQ plus community, and other marginalized communities, and I know I'm leaving some, that those folks at least are not X'd out from the beginning, that at least they get the call back for the interview, or they get the opportunity to apply for the scholarship. And so DEI, and also that you don't have to be on your job and hear a joke about a monkey, which actually did happen at the legislature. We had somebody who that sent an email out to everybody, when I was still serving in the House, shut the whole legislature down that day. Sent out this email about some, monkeys and eating bananas. It was insinuate. Yeah, that's the day we were in the well of the Alabama House of Representatives singing "We Shall Overcome." There's some video out there somewhere.
Okay.
But that is, we actually have had to deal with that too. And what is happening now with the Trump administration and all of these anti-woke people is the stuff that they think in their brain, they have felt empowered now to say out loud. It used to be the stuff that you did if even in our body, if somebody thought you were racist, well, nobody wanted. Now they could do racist stuff. They just didn't want anybody to say they were racist. Now, you're not even penalized for that.
Yeah, I don't care. Like,
You get elected president of the United States by being a racist. You get
well,
elected president of the United States by actually making fun of the disabled. So, they're not even penalized for that anymore.
well, I would say this too. Like, you all got so many very important matters
Yes.
to be taking up time because you only got a limited amount of days that you all are focused on one bill. And I think I might try to get her to come on this podcast because I've met her in a setting before. It was a bill about the What is a Woman bill.
Yeah, yes, Lord.
Like I even tell people that, like, show me the stat. Like I believe, okay, I believe in common sense, but a lot of this, show me the stats where there's actual boys playing in women's sports.
Yeah.
That's participating.
Especially in Alabama. Yeah.
Yeah. In Alabama, like this is like a prevalent issue,
Yeah. And I think with that piece of legislation, again, that's another bit of some of the red meat for Republicans with their base. Here is my issue. That piece of legislation didn't create one more job in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
It didn't make the cost of eggs go down. It literally did not, it didn't do anything to impact the kitchen table issues that people talk about in our state. But for their base, they let them get away with that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, they love it.
They absolutely love it 100%. But again, they haven't done anything to help the state of Alabama move the economy forward. That's what's crazy to me.
And I'm glad you bring that up because I was really saving this topic to almost to the end of our interview, but I guess I'll roll that up now. Is what is the state of gaming in Alabama? Like last year, like they came close to the finish line, and I guess by one vote it didn't pass. But
yeah, it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. So, and thank you for that one. That actually was a bill that upwards of 70% of the people in the state of Alabama have said that they want to have an opportunity to support or vote for an education lottery, because that's what it's specifically, that's the lottery portion. Of course, there's lottery and there is gaming. We have tried for the 20 years that I've been in the legislature to have some form of gaming in our state. Last year was the closest that we got. And there was a bill that passed again, this is a constitutional amendment just to allow the citizens to vote if they want it or not in the state. Passed the House of Representatives, got upstairs to the Senate, passed the Senate committee, got to the full floor of the Senate, and then lost on one vote. And from what we were told, because when I tell you people were mad, they were so mad on both sides of the aisle, there was one person that changed his vote. And didn't tell anybody. And everything that we deal with in the legislature is based on integrity. A lot of times when we go into stuff, you kind of have a clear understanding of what the vote count might look like. And on those kinds of big issues like that, we felt really good last year that we were going to get a bill passed. I think because, and at the beginning of this session, I went to the House sponsor, Chris Blacksher, who was sponsored it last year. I went to talk to him just to see had he heard anything, and he told me that like nobody had talked to him whatsoever. And bills of that magnitude, all the leadership is involved in, right? And so nobody talked to him at all. And his prediction was that we were not going to take it up at all, and it's looking like it's true. However, we don't finish the legislature until mid-May. I have seen crazier things happen. I have seen things happen to where we've said that this issue is dead. It's not going to happen. We're not going to deal with it in this session. And that bill comes up and we've had it passed in 5 days. But at this point today that I'm talking to you, Jarvis, I am not hearing that we're going to take up gaming at all this session. That would be a travesty. But that's where the voters come in. That's where the voters have to demand it. So again, we just talked about a bill like, well, what is a woman, and DEI and all of that low hanging fruit from the federal government that people are now trying to pass also at the state level. Gaming is one of those issues, again, that's nonpartisan, that could add billions of dollars to our economy. Billions. Set up an opportunity for our students to go to college for free.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, Alabama is funding educations in all of our surrounding states.
And then
so that's
also,
where the public comes in. Y'all got to demand it. You got to call your legislators. And I'll tell you, Democrats and Black people, we support gaming. You are going to have to get on the telephone with these Republicans and say, I want to have the opportunity to vote on if we get a chance to have gaming and a lottery in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, and then the thing about it too, like another big problem too that money can go towards is fixing infrastructure, which we could qualify for that because everybody knows in Alabama, if you, especially down the spring and summertime, I-65 is a freaking parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's a parking lot that just anybody's going to just try and go to the beach. You'll be like, even here up here in Jefferson County, once you get to Alabaster, it becomes like the parking lot. You know.
Oh, you bougie, Jarvis. You said go to the beach, not go to work.
Go to work, yeah, go to work. Yeah, we don't go to work. Yeah, and also that too, I mean, that most people do not have a car that we could qualify for matching funds to
for public transportation. We didn't even talk about that issue. Public transit.
Yeah, people spending money on inexpensive, on Ubers, taxis, to, like you said, to get to work for that. And then even going back to earlier, like you said about unemployment, we actually pay into the unemployment system. So why you cannot get the money that you have already paid in that they try to make it so hard for you to do?
That's exactly it. Every bit of that. So, you and I we got to do this again. We could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And you're right. So, and why I mentioned education lottery is just because of the gaming portion of it. But we've had a version of the bill that was for Medicaid before. Mm-hmm. And of course, you just mentioned infrastructure. That would be a huge piece. We've got roads and bridges all around the state of Alabama that need help. But that public transit piece is huge. Public transit also is a way that people move to self-sufficiency and change their economic status. Having access to jobs, education, taking care of our environment. Right now, Alabama is one of only 2 states that does not have a dedicated source of funding for public transit. Yeah. So there's all of this stuff. Linda Coleman Madison had a piece of legislation this past session that it just failed committee. And it was a $5 because we haven't been able to come up on the tag and it was permissive, meaning the counties would opt into it if they wanted to do it, and the Republicans voted it down. And go ahead, again, I'll be talking all day.
It just scratches my head that just even though, like you say, even with the numbers, you can come up with some type of common sense legislation that people need to, like over this past weekend, I know this time of this taping, we had these storms. One of the biggest things I saw on the storms was, trees, we get funding for rural storm shelters, because most of them, the homes out there in the rural areas was these mobile homes that was just being destroyed.
Yeah. Well, how about over the weekend too? I never lost power. We were prepared. But we didn't lose power or cable. Mm-hmm. I live in Pleasant Grove. Mm-hmm. But so many people did. So many people did not even get alerts. That's what we're hearing around the country. And I cannot think of the name of the organization because I'm trying to tell you, it's the National Aeronautic, whatever the national entity is. That's our weather, folk. That the Trump administration has made cuts.
I think
NOAA, I think is what it is. National Aeronautic Association, something like all of these organizations that folks hadn't heard of before and didn't realize how important they were to the country. Now folks are understanding, the impact of that organization, USDA and some others to the functionality of rural and urban America when these Republicans are saying, hey, cut them all. Federal folks are not doing anything. Now people are in the finding out phase of the impact of these organizations and these governmental entities. So we got work to do. Again, we can't sit back. I'm hoping that your listening audience will get more actively engaged in the state legislature and not let these folks get away with coming back and just telling you they're working when they actually are not. So we are at a crossroads in this country. And so we've got to continue to fight so we can continue to have a democracy and not let fascism take all the way over. We don't have a king in this country. That's why the forefathers left and came over here. We have a democratic republic, if you want to be specific about it, representative democracy. We elect people to represent our interests. And so you can't check out. You can't check out. You got to make folks accountable. So thank you, George. We got to do this again.
Yeah. So how, I know I'm putting this out there. If people want to reach you.
Yes.
What is the best way?
The best way really is to call my office. Thank you, Jesus. I have an assistant right now in the Senate and the House. I didn't have one. Let me get Lisa's direct number. But if you just literally Google my name, you just have to know how to do it. It's Merika Coleman, Merika Coleman. And I'm on every end of social media, everything except for I don't really do my Snapchat, but I'm on everything else. People do reach out to me that way. It's not the best way, but to call my office is really the best way. And my assistant's name is Lisa Tucker. And so my office number in Montgomery is 334-261-0226. So 334-261-0226. And my email at the legislature is marika.coleman@owlsenate.gov. So it's marika.coleman@owlsenate.gov. So Lisa and I both get that email. Like I said, they've been blowing me up all weekend on Senate Bill 170.
Send me that, text me that email address. But as you all can tell, Senator Coleman is not afraid to take your phone calls. She will. And I want to commend you. And also, there's everybody, my final thing before we kind of sign off is look at the representatives in Congress. I can only probably count. I know Shabari probably done one, but Congresswoman Sewell has done town halls.
She's done several town halls.
So we ain't seen some of our senators and some other people doing. Ask yourself why they're not doing it, everyone.
Correct. That's correct.
Ask them why. But thank you again, Senator Coleman, for coming on. Yeah, we got to do it again. And I need to ask you to come down to Montgomery. Like you say, ain't nothing like being down there in the thick of it.
In the thick of it, it's something else.
Yeah, and getting people that way, they have no choice but to talk to me.
And then also to see the visual, Jarvis, it is, even for me, to go to Montgomery and you see 35 senators, 35, that's it. And what they told us the day that we became a senator is now you're one of the most powerful people in the state of Alabama. 35 senators, only 7 Black people. 7 out of 35, to be able to see that. Only 4 women. Yeah. I'm one of 4 women.
Yeah.
So to see that visual also, it's powerful.
Oh wow, yes it is. Well, thank you all for watching. Please check out what'shappenedbirmingham.com for more interviews. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Everybody, I'm on TikTok as well. And the audio version of this on Apple Podcasts. Thank you all again and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the What's Happening Birmingham video podcast. Please check out our website, app, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest videos today.